join this webinar, be welcome. I'm Pascal Santamon. I'm the head of tax at the OECD Center for Tax Policy and Administration, where we have part of the tax inspectors without borders, but I'm extremely happy to share that panel with our friends from UNDP, who are the other organization dealing and handling tax inspectors without borders. And part of the panel, but she sits unfortunately for us in New York, but you will see her on your screen as well, is Gail Hurley, who's the policy specialist at UNDP in charge of this initiative. I'm also on my left here with James Karanja, who's the head of the Secretariat, Tax Inspectors Without Borders. James has joined this initiative now a couple of years ago, and he's the man in charge of Tax Inspectors Without Borders. And to assist him as project manager, we have Amna Khalifa, who has joined us a few months ago, and I'm very happy to start this panel to present the Tax Inspectors Without Border initiative. Why are we doing this today? Because we are releasing the annual report that is displayed on the slide, which is on your screen. This is released officially now, so give you some indications on how to read it. If I may, you have here listed the panelists and the cover of the Tax Inspectors Without Border report. Maybe a few words of introduction before turning to Gail and the rest of the team. What is Tax Inspectors Without Borders? It's pretty much of a silly idea at the beginning that a few of us had, and we must recognize the input from the NGOs. John Christensen, who's part of the Bureau, the Board of Tax Inspectors Without Borders, floated it years ago. And when I started as director at the Center for Tax Policy and Administration back in 2012, thought that there was room to do some innovative way of delivering technical assistance. By innovative, I mean not the traditional technical assistance, which is key, where the IMF, the World Bank, the UN, UNDP, and other branches at UN are excellent and do extremely good work. But there may have been a niche which was about delivering assistance on the ground with the administration and with the idea of learning by doing. And you can see that this is one of the key elements, a balanced approach with learning by doing. No substitution. It's not about foreign tax inspectors doing audits in a country on behalf of the country authorities, but instead it's about having secondment of tax inspectors, skilled tax inspectors from wherever in the world. It can be the north, it can be the south, and you will see that there is also south-south initiatives in these tax inspectors without borders, doing the work with the local team. What is the work? Doing an audit. It's a real-time current case. A country in Africa, in Latin America, in Eastern Europe, in Asia, wants to do the audit of a company. And when you deal with multinational companies, you generally deal with international tax issue, tax treaty, transfer pricing. And what is common for tax treaty and transfer pricing is that the rules are the same, almost the same. The principles are the same, whether you're in Africa, in Latin America, in Europe, or elsewhere, which means that you don't necessarily need to know the details of the legislation of, let's say, Senegal to be able to audit the company. You can do it with a broad knowledge of international tax. So the idea is for a skilled tax inspector to be embedded in the local team and share the knowledge, transfer the technology by doing the audit together with the local team, and then back to his or her country, and the local team will finish the work and then collect the tax. Of course, like all technical assistance, it's demand driven, and you will see that we are actually almost a victim of our success to the extent that we have significant demand for an initiative which has a lot of appeal to both the tax administrations, and I would say the recipient of the aid, but also the providers. Many tax inspectors across the world want to be part of it. They want to contribute to this initiative. They see the immediate impact, but also appealing to the political authorities. Many ministers and both ministers, heads of governments or states, have mentioned this initiative as something that they are very keen on promoting. And to be fair, I have to say, and we'll see that in the following slide, I have to say that this is an initiative which has the support of business. BIAC, which is the Business and Industry Advisory Committee to the OECD, and I think also to the UN, they participate to the UN work, has expressed strong support for this because it's a balanced approach, and it's an approach which promotes behavior change towards responsible taxation, which is a common goal shared by everybody. So you can see this as one of the key elements in the middle of these slides. I would say, of course, that it complements the work we've been doing for the past 5-6 years in changing international taxation to realign the location of the profits with the location of the activities, to make sure that we have fairer taxation, if we want to use that word, or that we have a system which is better functioning and which ensures that countries would get that what they have to collect, that we fight avoidance. And we've provided the policy tools with the changes through the BEPS project, with the MLI, with the minimum standards, but we are also providing the very technical assistance to the tax administrations to do this work. So it's about implementation, it's about tax administration, but in the broader context of the international changes, BEPS, BEPS, the tax transparency project as well, where information can circulate more fluently. And finally, it, of course, integrates with other technical assistance program. As I said, there is no substitution for the local teams, but no substitution for other technical assistance program. We have, by the way, the platform for collaboration on tax to ensure a good cooperation between the IMF, between the World Bank, between the UN, with all its components, and the OECD. By the way, I may advertise next week in Bali a conference of the Platform for Collaboration on Tax, where we'll showcase the good cooperation with all these organizations. So we're on a niche market. It's very specific, but it has an impact. And I would like now to turn to Gail, who will put that in the context of the SDGs, of the broad picture, and give more details. So Gail, you're in New York, and I'm happily turning to you.
Thank you very much, Pascal, and good morning, good afternoon to colleagues around the world. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Gail Hurley. I'm a Senior Advisor on Development Finance for UNDP and also Project Manager for Tax Inspectors Without Borders. Thank you, Pascal, for the very excellent overview and introduction to TIWB. And I think it's fantastic, actually, that we're a victim of our own success. At UNDP, we're very proud of our partnership with the OECD on Tax Inspectors Without Borders, and think that this year's annual report is really a testimony to all that we've achieved together over the last year and before that, and we certainly look forward to building even further on those successes in the future. So very briefly, financing the SDGs and the role of Tax Inspectors Without Borders. UNDP, we're a development institution. We care about development. And I wanted to put TIWB in the broader context of supporting countries in their efforts to mobilize more resources for sustainable development and the SDGs. SDGs, we know we've set the bar much higher in what we want to achieve in development terms by 2030. It's an ambitious international agenda, and the financing needs are very high. Our sister organization, UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, estimates that annual financing needs are around 5 to 7 trillion annually for the SDGs, only a fraction of which is being met. and they estimate there's an annual financing gap of around 2.5 trillion. So more resources are needed, and many low-income countries in particular need more support to mobilise domestic resources, in particular for sustainable development through taxation. And I think our annual report shows that they're increasingly turning to tax inspectors without borders for practical support in this direction. I can't emphasize strongly enough just how important domestic resources are for sustainable development, and in mobilizing resources at scale in particular. And the numbers are very striking. Here on the slide, you'll see that domestic resources outstrip international capital flows to developing countries by over 3.7 times. So supporting countries in that agenda is really important. Those resources are also country owned, which is also critical. And the good news is that many developing countries are making excellent progress in this direction. And we saw recently that, many developing countries are making strides to increase their tax to GDP ratios. But of course, progress is patchy across countries, and in particular, low-income countries need support. We also see a lot of other challenges when it comes to domestic resources. So it's not just about mobilizing more resources, but it's about spending those resources better. And it's about, capacities in public financial management, your tax policies as well. And I think, as our annual report shows, TIWB is helping to address one important gap when it comes to taxation in developing countries, and that is helping countries to address, in particular, the problems of international taxation in relation to issues such as transfer pricing by multinational corporations and other areas. So if we turn to the next slide, what are we doing concretely as UNDP to support tax inspectors without borders? So the annual report points to an important and expanded role for UNDP and our field offices around the world. UNDP is present in over 130 countries worldwide. So what are we doing? We're helping to raise awareness of the importance of taxation at the national level, raise awareness of tax inspectors without borders as one way to help countries build demand for TIWB assistance. Critically, we're also helping to support governments to build national policy dialogues on financing for development. So how should they finance their national development strategies, and what role for taxation and domestic resource mobilization? Thirdly, our country offices are helping with knowledge sharing, case studies, sharing lessons learned across countries. And then finally, we offer practical program support. So that includes contracting experts, managing a roster of tax audit experts with a variety of expertise, and providing in-country intelligence and support while experts are deployed in the field. So when it comes to our roster of experts, UNDP manages a roster of around 40 experts, 10 of which are from developing countries. They have a variety of backgrounds. So some have sectoral specific backgrounds, for instance, in oil and gas. Others are experienced in, for instance, transfer pricing or other areas, have different language skills. And so we can draw on that pool of talent to support our work around the world. And to finish, a little bit of promotion. We're currently expanding our roster of experts, and applications are now being advertised on our website. So please go to UNDP Jobs and have a look if you're interested in applying. The English language version is up there at the moment, but this will be supplemented by applications, a call for applications from French-speaking and Spanish-speaking candidates shortly. And we invite strongly qualified women in particular to apply.
Yes.
So back over to the Secretariat, perhaps to speak a little bit more about concretely what our programs in the field have looked like over the past year. Over to you, James. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail and Pascal, for the introduction. My role will be to share some brief highlights, and I will do this together with Anne Khalifa. And the first slide you see represents the demand, the spread of our TIWB programs currently across the globe, whether current or those that are coming. And I am pleased to report that we have now, since our last report, an increase, a 100% increase in the number of programs since we last reported. We have increased coverage, you see, with a growing spread across the Eastern Europe, Latin America, where we're looking to get into the Pacific region. And it's been extremely encouraging for us, I believe, to see partners also come on board, new partners that we've highlighted in our report that are also really willing to step in to help us to meet this demand. So we are extremely delighted that we are within a period of 3 months or 90 days able, from the completion of a request by host administration, able to convert that to start an actual program. Our challenge, obviously, in the coming year will be to reduce that amount of time as we also gain more experts, and the resources have been made available by development partners. So we're extremely pleased to report that we're making quite good progress. Again, the experts have also been extremely supportive and interested to provide us with the experts we need to sign on to the roster, and for that we're truly grateful. Talking about our revenue increases, we are delighted to announce, as we have in this report, the revenue increases from our host administrations of US dollars 414 million. This is an amount that has been attributed to work provided through TIWB, in instances also working with some of our very close partners, ATAF and the World Bank, the African Tax Administration Forum, that is. And to see what you now see on your screen is a spread of the increases, various increases since we last reported the 278 million in our previous report. We now have 136 million collected for that period. And we are pleased, when I listened to Gail, as you mentioned, the sheer need, the huge financing gap that is there for the SDGs. Clearly our challenge as we increase the number of programs will be to see that we can also make, leave an indelible mark on the ability of countries to meet their financing needs. So we are still quite a drop in the ocean, but we take on the challenge that even as we expand in our program coverage, that we shall also see increased revenues. So talking about, we're very keen on what it means for us in terms of value for money. And what we've done, we report this, you see it in the report where we highlight, where we've put together all the costs we've incurred since we started from the pilot projects all through to the current costs. And we want to be able to tabulate this so that we also monitor our value for money proposition. Given this is still fairly early in a lot of programs, say like in 2017 that were launched, you have costs in there that don't yet have company revenues. 2016, 2017, a lot of those programs will be turning in quite some revenue in the months and years ahead. So we are quite confident that this return on investment will increase significantly. As it is, we can report that in Africa alone, currently this number is substantially higher, just over 140 US dollars for every dollar spent. Moving on to our next slide, I would like to focus on what are the broader impacts we see from the program. Talking about skills development, one of those things you cannot quantify in monetary terms, but we are delighted that we see an increased confidence in the members who are participating in this program. We've had instances of those who've received this training also better participating in meetings, international meetings, the inclusive framework, where they're able to contribute a lot better. But that said, we see, like I say, a lot of confidence and credibility being built from these auditors having gone through TIWB. We see a lot of organizational change as well. We see elements there of how staff are now getting more specialized, teams being set up to be able to do this work. And in this report, we've actually taken the effort to place what we see as success factors of what makes a good TIWB program, and clearly the organizational elements and how we motivate the staff that are involved in this is one critical aspect of the broader impact. Improved tools and procedures. What we have is TIWB experts are not just going in and not coming out without leaving something that these countries can go back to in form of checklists, in form of manuals, in form of processes for risk assessment. Clearly very, very useful tools and procedures that will long outlive the TIWB experts being on the ground. Finally, and the big picture here is a strong message that all of this is sending to taxpayers that wherever you are in any part of the globe, TIWB is reaching out. No country should be left behind. No country is without the means to effect the changes. And so we see with improved credibility, improved requests for information, cases are getting completed sooner, and there is a much bigger push towards voluntary compliance by companies, for which we're truly pleased. So we want to be able, our measuring tools for both the medium term to long term, to be able to test those and see that we're actually able to track those benefits. So in the annual report, we highlight as well some important lessons that you will see in there around sharing experiences. We had a great event in November last year for the experts and the stakeholders, have had a series of side events in major international conferences, and clearly there is a strong need, a strong demand. The global partnership for development and cooperation has also, there's that need that others in the development space want to hear about these successes in TIWB. And we are pleased in the coming forum, the Paris Peace Forum, we have an opportunity once again to highlight the great work that TIWB is doing and the impact that we are having. On the sector focus, we report in this report what you're going to see about our increased sector focus. I think arising from the experiences we have in each of the programs, we have started to see trends. And one of those is that as people become more confident in doing the general audits, they're now asking us for more support on very specific sectors, at the telecoms, in mining, in the financial sector. And we are now sending actually experts that are focused on just specific areas. We're sending in industry experts. Some of the programs you'll see we've reported in that report would be mining experts, would be those in diamond valuation. So an exciting and interesting reach for us. Whole of government was something we featured before. This whole idea that as a government works together across different departments, different ministries, are able to send out experts efficiently in who's financing, who's providing the expertise, and that how this aligns with our country's development policies. Now this becomes even more critical now as we look into the new pilot program we've launched on tax and crime, where in the host administrations, this may go just beyond the tax administration. We need a few more agencies, investigative agencies working alongside the tax administration, and that whole of government approach will be very critical for success. And we highlight that together with South-South cooperation, opportunities we're creating for mentoring, triangular cooperation that will allow that South-South cooperation grows, we increasingly see countries within the South who want to enhance this idea of peer-to-peer learning, and that there's a little more cultural context to the work that they do. So over to Dr. Amna Khalifa.
Thank you, James. Moving on to more results that have been highlighted in our report, beyond our increasingly strengthening partnership with the OECD, with the UNDP, we have also been reinforcing our partnerships with other international and regional organizations. This has helped us extend the reach of TIWB programs through joint implementation. Noted developments over the last year include those with the African Tax Administration Forum, the ATAF, CREDAP, CEAT, Forum on Tax Administration, the FTA, and the US Office of Technical Assistance. We acknowledge and are very thankful for all the support from our development partners, which is very generously provided by the countries listed on the screen now. They have also been, some of them have also been sending their experts to implement TIWB programs in our host administrations. But as the demand grows, obviously more resources are needed to sustain this growth. And we call upon all our partners to further support us in these great endeavors. Moving on to further highlights from the report, the last year, 2017-18, for TIWB has had a great emphasis on outreach and communication. In this respect, we have launched our first e-newsletter in March 2018, which highlights all our activities and achievements, and which many of you may have read on our website. The second one will be launched later this fall, and please keep a lookout on our website, www.tib.org. As James mentioned about our very successful stakeholder workshop and experts roundtable last year in November, in response to a lot of requests, we have also launched this year in April 2018, a TIWB experts community of practice through the knowledge sharing platform developed by Canada's Revenue Agency. We encourage all our experts to continue using this platform. This will help them share their experiences, their best practices, their challenges, their results, and also enhance peer-to-peer interaction. As has been mentioned before, we have a very ambitious goal of 100 deployments by 2020. We are very much on track by surpassing our target in 2017-18 of 35 deployments. We are now looking at 65 deployments by 2018-19. That's about April 2019. And as you have heard, we have 44 programs which have been completed or are ongoing, and more than 20 on the pipeline. So I believe we are on very good track record. And this is all because of the growing demand and our expanding partnerships. And as James said, we will continue to focus on South-South cooperation and foster mentorships wherever possible as we go through to our 100 deployments. Going forward, in the third year of this initiative, TIWB is now in a good position to focus on longer-term sustainable impacts, which will include impacts on skills development, on organizational change, on the consistency of the audit process, as well as on taxpayer compliance behavior. So the next year, we have developed tools, as James mentioned, and we will be focusing on the revenue impact is definitely going to be there, but also on sustainable long-term impacts. As again mentioned, this year, we hope to establish a pool of industry experts working with various private sector organizations. Pascal mentioned BIAC. We will also be cooperating with the B team to set up a pool of experts which will go and help developing countries understand these sectors and the relevant audit challenges for them to be able to better audit these complex sectors. This next year will also focus on expanding the scope of TIWB. As James mentioned, we have already started a pilot on tax and criminal investigations. We're looking for more countries to start this pilot to see the applicability of this model in other areas of domestic resource mobilization. And last but not least, based on the of our conference last year in November, we plan another international conference in the early part of 2019. So do follow us on Twitter at Twitter_news for all the updated news. And now I hand back to Pascal for the wrap up and to move on to the question and answer session.
Thank you, Amna. Thank you, Gail, and thanks, James, for having participated to this. We have a few questions and a few minutes left to respond to the questions. We have already received questions by email or through Twitter, so we'll just address them. Maybe one additional comment I would like to make is that, or an invitation actually to you all, we have on our website, but also on YouTube, a few videos, at least one quite good, which is about describing what happened in Liberia, where we conducted a TIWB initiative. And I think you have pretty telling stories there. In particular, the comments by the then president of the country and the finance minister and the tax commissioner explaining what's at stake, how it works, what's their feedback. And it takes 5 minutes, but I think with these 5 minutes, you will get the sense of what we're achieving with this initiative, and we'll try to do some more sharing of experiences in French-speaking countries. Apologies to the French speakers. We'll do one in French another time, c'est promis. But we'll do other videos and embedding people in these experiments. So the first question we have, and I think I turn to James to respond to it, is there was a TIWB stakeholders and expert meeting last November 2017, 1 year ago. So will there be any other one anytime soon? James?
Yes, Pascal, thanks for that question. We noted at the first meeting how much interest there was in this idea that experts come together to share experiences, to learn from one another. So in addition to the KSP, where they have this platform, we actually have in mind to set up an event for the experts in next year, early part of next year, and we'll be sending you more information about that. On the stakeholders, I think, Pascal, you have a big picture to do something larger, to work, looking at potentially an international conference. So details of which, again, will be communicated as soon as we have a clear idea as to where and when this can be held.
Thank you, James. Gail, next question is for you. And it's a very basic question. There are many tax inspectors who are excited with this initiative. So the basic question is, how can I join the Tax Inspectors Without Border project and as an expert? Gail.
Thank you very much for that question, Pascal. An important question. And of course, we're always looking to expand our collaborations and contacts with qualified tax auditors. And, you know, are immensely proud of all the interest that has been shown amongst tax audit experts and tax administrations around the world in our work. So we advertised for tax audit experts the year before last to join a UNDP managed roster. I'm happy to announce that we're once again advertising for qualified tax audit experts to join our roster. So the advertisement is open on our website for English-speaking experts, or those who speak English well as a second language, and French and Spanish language advertisements will follow shortly in November and December. So once you've applied via our website, if we're interested in your application, you will be interviewed by a team. And then once you are on the roster, when new opportunities arise, you will be contacted. All roster experts are contacted as regards their interest and their availability. to take on particular assignments. So some assignments may require specific areas of technical expertise or sectoral expertise, for example, in extractive industries or telecommunications. Others may have specific language requirements, but those will be detailed in each individual advertisement, and you can have a look at those, decide whether you meet the requirement. You would be available to take on that assignment. Normally assignments last for around 12 to 18 months, but are composed of periodic deployments throughout that time. So you will be deployed for 1 or 2 weeks and then come back home, provide some remote assistance, and then join the local team later on afterwards. So please do take a look at the advertisement on our website, and if you have any questions, you can certainly contact us at UNDP or the TIWB Secretariat. Thanks.
Thank you, Gail. That's extremely clear. I would just like to add that if you are an active tax inspector in one administration, you can apply, but good also to inform your own administration, because at some point we just make sure that the administration is fine. I should have said that one of the key partners and represented in the board of the initiative is the Forum on Tax Administration, where we have the tax commissioners of more than 50 tax administrations. They are supportive of the initiative. Of course, they are a bit nervous not to have their own resource, used for other purpose than theirs. So they want to have their say, they want to participate. So important if you're a tax inspector that this is also seen with your own hierarchy. But I think Gail has been extremely clear on the process of feeding the roster, which is open to all, but subject to all the procedure she's described. We just received a new question, and we'll take, we prepared some additional questions, but priority to the ones you are sending us on, have you used databases, commercial or not commercial databases, to do risk assessment? So it's a question on the substance of the work, and maybe here a word of caution on our part. This initiative is handled by UNDP and by the OECD, by your secretariat, in terms of matching the demand and the supply. We have tax administrations willing to do audits. They have to describe what kind of audit they want to carry out so that we can select the right tax inspector to provide the resource. That said, we are dealing with real cases. And there is something which is extremely strict, which is tax secrecy. Tax secrecy is key for the protection of the confidentiality of the information, for the protection of taxpayers' rights, and there is no way that people not allowed to know about the names of the taxpayers or the special circumstances would be looped in, which means that the Secretariat, as such, does not have access to the cases, does not have access to the names of the companies which are audited. We know which sector we have a demand for an audit, but we don't know more than that. And we ask for anonymized reports from those experts which have been involved, so that we know what's the outcome, we know how much money has been paid, but we don't know which company. Which drives me to the fact that we are not on site with the tax inspectors to do the audits, and we don't really know what techniques they're using. That's a very good question, though. So we may want to have questions to the experts and see what are the special challenges that they have faced with developing countries compared to what they're accustomed to dealing with in developed countries, because most of them come from developed countries, even though, as Amna indicated, there is some South-South cooperation. So I take it that it's a very good question, which may help us identify what are the gaps in the tools, like databases when we talk about transfer pricing, maybe other challenges. I heard one from a tax inspector when we're debriefing, again, without the name of the company, which was about the fact that the companies audited said, well, we have not kept track records of everything. We've lost it, so we don't have it. And clearly this would be a behavior unacceptable in a country ruled by law and where you have an old relationship with the tax administration. So good question, and I promise that we'll look into that so that we can draw on the experience of these tax inspectors without borders to try to identify better the gaps and see how we can bridge them. A question, don't know whether it's for Amna or for James, but how can a tax administration from a developing country willing to benefit from tax inspectors without borders assistance, how can it request the assistance? What's the procedure?
So the procedure for host administrations who are requesting assistance in a specific area or a niche or the sector for audit is, what they need to do is they need to first understand and identify the scope of the audit. Then they need to go on our website, which actually has some questions which will help them identify the scope. And the first step is to fill in a small one-page online request, which is called an assistance request form. It's very simple, just a few questions: name about your tax administration, the scope in which this TIWB program will be framed, any special expertise that you require of a TIWB expert, and then that's about it. So once you fill that online, the Secretariat will get that, will contact you for further details, and then start up the matching process. Even then, if you would like, you can contact the Secretariat at any time, even before you fill that out. So the first step is identify your scope and try and fill out that small one-page online assistance request form.
Thank you for this. A question which has just arrived is about the impact and the impact on behavioral changes. And I would add to this, what are the main benefits for developing countries? Maybe I can turn to Gail to give a sense of what's the impact, and maybe on the behavioral impact. Liberia, I think, was a good example. If you have it in mind, could you please share that with us, Gail?
Sure, no, thank you for that, Pascal. I think there are multiple benefits at the country level, some of which are not easily quantifiable, beyond the revenue increase that we can attribute to TIWB supported programs. But, James has already spoken at length about the way tax auditors help tax administrations in developing country bridge the gap between theory and practice for better knowledge and skills transfer. We enable or provide access to highly qualified international tax audit experts, both on-site and the remote assistance that we provide thereafter, which is also a very important component. We're looking to expand our mentoring program as well. And, of course, there's the increased revenues component. Many people always ask us, what is the dollar number that we can put on our program, and we're very proud to be at 414 in revenues directly attributed to our support. But I think for us as UNDP, what we're seeing, and which we believe is very important, is that through this program, we're able to support governments and policymakers to initiate a broader national dialogue on the role of tax in financing development, and just how important that is. And an opportunity to learn from other countries, including within the region as well, is also an important benefit. So there in brief, I'm sure perhaps James can add to that, perhaps from the Liberia case on the importance that we can also have in signalling behavioural change over the long term on the activities of multinational enterprises.
Yeah, so they just on this Liberia case study, we had anecdotal feedback on the impact that once the message is out there that TIWB has rolled into town, is that the multinationals are already speaking to one another, already raising the issue that, look, companies are now being targeted. So we know from an anecdotal point of view that there is some change in the way, because some of these taxpayers then roll back to the tax administration to say they would like to make adjustments to their own returns. And so that was a positive thing. I think the challenge for us would be whether this is something we can then monitor, like I said, from the medium to long term, to be able to see how far we've moved the needle from point A to B. I think our ultimate goal at the end, if we were to say TIWB was successful, one is to see that the movement on responsible taxation from private sectors is taking on quite a strong support from across the board, that if that became entrenched to a great extent, to see that companies provide all the documentation that are required of them, pay the tax that they're supposed to pay in each country based on the economic reality of the transactions that they do. So these are things that will not only be monitored from TIWB, but also from a BEPS perspective.
Good, thank you. Thanks, Gail and James. Another question, which is about the upcoming programs. Where will they be? So if we can have a picture there. And we have in particular a question in the Latin American region. We can see Peru and Colombia as programs which have taken place or are taking place. Is there any other targeted country? I would say we don't target countries. We're targeted by countries. It's demand driven. So we don't plan to go in a country if there is no request. But are there requests from this region? I don't know who can respond to that one. James.
Yeah. So perhaps Amna could help me where anything else we need to say. But just to say that we have a great partnership now with CEST. And which says now we're looking to expand into that particular region. We have a program coming up with Honduras. We have a program coming up with the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean region. And we've received expression of interest from countries like Guyana. And we're really, really excited that we can expand into this particular region. As Pascal mentioned, given that we have that strong integration with the work that the regional bodies are doing, would be very keen, as we are doing now, to work alongside CEST to provide the programs there, even as a component of what CEST is already doing. Amna?
Yes, and as James mentioned, we also have upcoming programs in Costa Rica and Colombia.
Right.
One has recently started, and there's another one upcoming, and one in Costa Rica, hopefully starting later this year.
Good, thank you. Maybe the last question before maybe Gail says a few words of conclusion, which is about, there is one question about the digitalization or digitization of tax payments. Do they fall into our work? I would say not really. Again, it's a tax audit by a local tax administration with the assistance of tax inspectors without borders. This is not a grant initiative where you would have kind of tax inspectors coming from nowhere in a country doing an audit. It's based on the sovereignty of countries. They decide what they do. They just need assistance, tailor-made, this niche project, and it depends on the audit. So I'm not sure that we can really say digitization of tax payments, is it something covered or not? But there was a very practical question on, do we plan to have open training for professionals interested in tax inspectors without borders? I must say I don't have the answer right now. I would say we expect to have skilled tax inspectors, and that's part of feeding the roster that Gail is in charge. Then there may be some specific questions or some sensitivities explaining the legal issues, because there are many legal issues. We haven't mentioned them, but there is a guidelines. I mean, there is a set of guidelines explaining what the legal issues are, what the conflicts of interest are. But maybe, Gail, do you want to say a few words on why not an open training for professionals interested in being part of it? What do you do with the people on the roster of assessors? Do you call them and say, tomorrow you go to this country? What's happening? Maybe you can be a bit granular in describing these. And then maybe, Gail, as we're coming to the end of the webcast, you could say a few words of conclusion before I turn to the team here in Paris.
Well, we haven't so far called someone up desperately and said, you know, we need you in Cape Verde tomorrow. You know, but that's not to say it might not happen. It certainly may, but we do try to give our roster tax audit experts a little bit more notice than that. And we normally speak with host administrations about what they need, you know, when they're available to receive an expert, and then it's a discussion with the expert as to when works for both of them, and we can build a program thereafter. You know, we always have, when we have these kinds of conversations with the broader community, and also in Paris at the stakeholders workshop in November last year, we always receive many fantastic suggestions about what more we can do. So, you know, establishing our mentoring program came on the back of that. Suggestions to move into the areas of tax and crime, build a training program. You know, we're always interested to receive your suggestions about, you know, what else we can do, and ways we can improve. So please do keep in touch on that. But what I would say also is that also depends critically on the resourcing that we have as TIWB, and we really rely on the very generous support provided by a number of donors that Amna mentioned, principally from European countries, financial and in-kind support. You know, TIWB really is a collaborative team effort. We have a fantastic team in Paris, we have our team here in New York, but we also rely on host administrations, partner administrations, our roster, partnerships with regional tax organizations and others like the World Bank, IMF, our country offices in the field. So we really do count on the efforts of everyone to continue to make TIWB the success that it is, and build on those successes even more in the future. And hopefully we can come back to you in a year and say that, you know, we're really nearing our target of 100 deployments by the end of 2019. So, you know, thanks very much to everyone for their interest, and certainly keep in touch with us. You can always reach out to us via our website, and we will respond. So thanks. Over to you, Pascal.
Well, thank you, Gail. I think these are great words of conclusion. We are receiving more questions, but we're running out of time. So what I suggest, in the spirit of what Gail has just said, we're open to suggestions, we're open to comments, we're open to improving this initiative, which must be an inclusive initiative. That's the goal. And as we said, there is pretty much of a success story for the time being, but we need to build on that, and we count on the support of interested tax administrations, interested tax inspectors, interested businesses in supporting this for a better balance in the overall tax system. So we very much welcome your input, your comments. As James indicated, we are thinking of organizing a gathering sometime in the first half of 2019 to take stock of where we are, and to also share the progress and take into account the comments made. And as Gail also suggested, we could have a rendezvous next year at the same time of the release of the report to see where we are. So we invite you to pay attention, to participate, to send us your comments. We have a website. I think it's pretty handy and easy to navigate. We have videos, we'll have more videos to come. So it's a fun initiative for the common good. So it's fun and useful. And you can see an infused team here. So let me thank our friends from UNDP, Gail and the team in New York, Amna, James here, Melanie and the whole team that you don't see on the screen, but who have worked hard to prepare this. So thank you all. And we hope to see you very soon on the website. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.